Hey guys, tonight we travel back, way back, to a time when Tokyo was still called Edo. The moon hangs low over a sprawl of wooden rooftops, whispering wind curling through narrow alleyways lit by swaying paper lanterns. You're standing at the northern edge of Edo, a vast and teeming city of the Tokugawa shogunate in the early 18th century. It's late, and the streets are nearly silent, save for the distant clack of Geta sandals and the occasional snore from a second-floor window. You can almost taste the wood smoke in the air and feel the soft crunch of gravel under your straw sandals. You probably wouldn't survive if you lived there. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with your city and local time. I love seeing where and when you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You arrive in Edo with nothing but the clothes on your back. Cotton, plain, definitely not silk. That would be illegal for someone of your class. Around you, the city pulses not with noise, but with order. There are over 1 million people in this wooden metropolis, yet everything feels oddly hushed. You expect chaos. Instead, you find rules. They are everywhere. The guard at the bridge barely glances at you, but you know he's memorizing your face. Each district has gates that close at sunset and open at dawn. If you were trying to get in after curfew, you'd be politely, then firmly denied. If you pushed your luck, you might be reported. And if you're reported, well, punishment is swift and not always subtle. You follow the canal inward, past dock workers tying off barges and merchants pulling shutters closed. A cloud of grilled fish smoke rolls over from a street vendor's fire, mixing with the musk of horses and something more acrid, human waste. Not all streets are lucky enough to have the new night soil collectors. You step carefully. Historians still argue whether Edo was one of the world's cleanest or filthiest cities. You pass a group of fire watchers, men in robes with lanterns strapped to bamboo poles. They aren't firefighters. Their job is to spot smoke before it becomes disaster. Fires are Edo's greatest fear. With so much timber packed so tightly, one spark can take out 5 city blocks. There's no real central planning. Samurai neighborhoods crowd the higher ground. Merchants and artisans fill the valleys below. Everything seems crowded, crooked, alive. You duck as a rickety 2-story building leans over the street, laundry flapping above your head. The building looks like it's about to collapse, but it's been standing for 20 years, probably. You see signs painted in bold black strokes, some vertical, some hanging sideways. Many have strange symbols and family crests. Most shops are required to stay modest. Flashiness could get a merchant fined. In this world, appearances matter almost as much as taxes. You pass a soba stand where a hunched old man ladles hot noodles into wooden bowls. 2 children sit cross-legged nearby, slurping in silence. Their sleeves are neatly rolled. In Edo, even children obey the rhythm of order. You turn down a narrower path, one barely wider than your outstretched arms. Here, the houses are more tightly packed. You overhear someone behind the walls practicing shamisen, plucking out a lullaby that falls just short of in tune. A baby cries. Somewhere else, a dog barks. then gets shushed. At last, you reach your lodging for the night, an inn tucked into the side of a curved alleyway. The signboard reads Yorozuya, a name so common it might as well say generic inn. You slide open the door, careful not to step on the wooden threshold. That would be rude. Inside, the air smells of tatami mats, sandalwood, and simmering barley. A woman in a navy kimono bows deeply. You bow back, lower, because you're the guest, or perhaps because she outranks you. It's hard to tell. Either way, your thighs burn from crouching. You're not used to bowing so often. She leads you to a small room with paper walls and a flickering candle. There's no bed, just a rolled-up futon. You sit, your knees crack. You wonder how anyone does this every day. Then again, no one here is lounging. Edo is a city of movement, of posture, of ritual. She pours you a cup of hot tea, and you murmur thanks. Arigatou gozaimasu, hoping your accent doesn't betray your strangeness too much. She smiles politely but says nothing. The silence feels dense, almost staged. It's not that she's unfriendly. It's that you're expected to already know what's appropriate. Edo doesn't forgive ignorance. It endures it, then quietly lets it ruin you. You sip your tea. It's bitter, earthy, and slightly gritty. You pretend to enjoy it. She leaves the room, sliding the door closed with the softest touch. Oh, you're alone now, wrapped in faint candlelight and the slow creak of the building settling into itself. Outside, a wooden clacker echoes down the street, Hiyoshigi, a night watchman's rhythm, reminding the city to sleep carefully. You lie down, flat on the mat, arms to your sides like a disciplined monk. There's no pillow, just a wooden neck rest. Your spine protests. It will protest more tomorrow. You close your eyes. A rooster crows. You sit bolt upright. It's not dawn, not yet, but in Edo, people wake early, long before the sun, long before you're ready, because order doesn't wait. It marches forward hour by hour, rule by rule, and so do you. You're barely awake when the first sound hits you, the scrape of a wooden ladle against a pot, somewhere outside your thin paper wall, then the rustle of straw sandals, a throat being cleared politely, and then, without ceremony, a knock, not urgent, just expected. You open the sliding door and bow instinctively. The innkeeper bows too, handing you a warm, damp towel and a small lacquer tray with something wrapped in cloth, plus rice balls, maybe. There's no good morning, no chatter, just eyes lowered and gestures rehearsed so many times they've become part of the weather. The sun isn't up yet, but Edo is already unfolding. Outside, the sky glows a faint gray blue, the kind that warns of humidity and crowds. You step back into the street, where smoke from hearths is rising from rooftop vents and curling like ribbon over the tightly packed buildings. A line of barefoot boys jogs past you, buckets swinging from bamboo poles balanced on their shoulders. They're part of the Heino band, the city's fire patrol, just children in training now. But soon they'll carry more than buckets. Already, the alley is filled with activity. Women scrubbing wooden thresholds, men sweeping the gutters with straw brooms, neighbors bowing to each other, shallowly or deeply depending on rank, family name, and memory of past disputes. You take note of the way people avoid standing still for too long. It's not fear, it's rhythm. Edo runs on invisible rails, and if you stop moving, you fall behind. You pass a row of small wooden signboards propped outside each home, neatly inscribed with the names and occupations of the residents. Every neighborhood is accountable. There's no anonymity here. If someone commits a crime, not only is the person punished, their neighbors may be too. The Gonengumi system groups 5 households together under shared responsibility, a web of surveillance disguised as civic order. Historians still argue whether this fostered community spirit or institutionalized distrust. A bell chimes twice from a nearby temple tower. That's the signal for Nanatsu Doki, the first hour of the morning in Edo's divided day. Time here isn't told in minutes or seconds, but in 6 daily segments that shift with the season. In summer, this hour might begin before 5 a.m. In winter, much later. You don't own a clock, because only temples and government offices do. Everyone else listens, or guesses. A city official walks by in quiet sandals, his robe marked with the crest of the Tokugawa. He doesn't look at you. He doesn't need to. You already moved out of the way. The streets grow louder as stalls open, doors creak, and vendors shout the day's first sales. One man calls out, "Tofu, fresh tofu," and a woman echoes with "pickled plum, 2 for a mon." The money jingles strangely here, round coins with square holes, strings of them tied at your waist if you're lucky enough to have more than 3. You reach the neighborhood's well, where several women have formed a line. The water is drawn by hand, poured into wooden buckets, but with practiced grace. A little girl with her hair tied in 2 tight buns stares at you curiously. You smile. She frowns. Her mother scolds her gently and bows to you, though you're not sure if it's apology or politeness or both. You wonder if she thinks you're a ronin, or worse, a merchant pretending not to be one. The line between classes in Edo is not just legal, it's lived. Samurai walk with dignity, merchants with discretion, artisans with a kind of confident humility. But no matter your station, everyone starts their day by showing they belong, that they know their place, and knowing your place means following the rules. A man walks by carrying 2 wooden boards that say "No fires allowed today." He posts one at the end of the street and bows in both directions before walking off. Today must be unofficial no flame day. You glance back toward the inn, wondering if your host broke that rule already. With the morning tea, distant voice begins chanting. It's low and rhythmic. A city announcer, perhaps. Town criers in Edo aren't loud. They're melodic, almost meditative. You catch fragments about road repairs, an upcoming inspection, and something about a merchant who forgot to cover his incense burner and caused minor damage. He'll pay in coins. If he's lucky, in shame, definitely. You walk on, watching a man chalk a list of neighborhood duties onto a wooden notice board. Street sweeping, family of Kichiro. Night patrol, family of Imai. You notice no one argues. These tasks rotate like the seasons, predictable, inescapable, and communal. Refusing a duty could result in formal reprimand or quiet social exile, which in Edo might be worse. You stop at a tiny stall that sells rice porridge. A woman waves you over and offers a small bowl with green onion and miso. You hand over one of the smallest unit of coin and sit on an overturned bucket. The porridge is watery but warm. You slurp it as best you can without drawing attention. The woman eyes you as she refills someone else's bowl. "Not from around here," she says softly. It's not a question. You shake your head. She nods once, then looks away. Nothing else is said. She's already offered more words than most strangers would. Still, the message is clear. Edo isn't cruel to outsiders, but it doesn't welcome them either. You must adapt, quickly, or stand out forever. Down the street, someone begins clapping wooden blocks together, kimikomi, a signal that the morning sweep has ended, and the neighborhood is officially open for trade. A boy rings a handheld bell as he walks past your stall. You follow him until you realize your mistake. He's not a guide. He's a warning. Behind him comes a group of high-ranking samurai on horseback. Everyone moves aside without being told. No one looks them in the eye. You do, briefly, and regret it immediately. You bow deeply, holding your breath until they pass. One of the horses snorts in your direction. Later, someone will say, "Be grateful they didn't stop." You make your way back to the main road, shoes dusty, stomach half full, mind already dizzy. It's barely the first hour of the day. You've broken no rules, at least, not yet. But you feel the weight of the rules you haven't even learned. They don't yell. They don't punish immediately. But they're there, all around you, quiet as steam from a morning bowl of rice. You move forward because everyone else is. You hear it before you see it, the rapid, dull thump of knives against wooden boards. The sound echoes from behind thin walls and storefront stalls as families and vendors begin preparing the first real meal of the day. You follow your nose, earthy steam, something lightly fried, and is that dried fish? Your stomach rumbles, despite the watery porridge you sipped earlier. You haven't eaten much, and what you did manage was more of a warm gesture than a meal. Now you're ready for something substantial, or at least something with flavor. You stop at a row of open stalls near a crossroads. There's no menu, of course, just pots, baskets, bowls of glistening pickled vegetables, and a few strips of dried tofu curling at the edges like old parchment. A heavy-set man in a short robe stirs a steaming pot over a clay stove, using a ladle carved from bamboo. He nods once without smiling. That's the invitation. You crouch on a tiny stool made of warped wood. Your knees crack again. It's becoming a familiar pain. The bowl he hands you is warm in your hands. Inside is rice. Well, not quite. It's millet, a cheaper grain boiled with water and thickened with barley. Resting on top is a shrunken slice of daikon radish, one pickled plum, and a few chopped scallions. And you take your first bite and immediately understand something essential about Edo life. Survival is not the same as satisfaction. It's not that the food is bad. It's clean, simple, and filling enough, but it tastes like nothing. A gentle graininess on your tongue, a sour jolt from the plum, and salt from the pickles. It is fuel, nothing more. You chew slowly as people pass behind you, carpenters with bundles of tools, women balancing stacked baskets, children with sleepy eyes and yesterday's dust still on their feet. None of them seem bothered by the meal in front of you. This is just how mornings begin. You glance across the alley and see a samurai seated on a small wooden platform, carefully eating grilled river fish, white rice, and a bowl of egg custard soup. His chopsticks move slowly, deliberately. He finishes with a sip of thick, roasted tea. You glance down at your own bowl and quickly look away. This is your first encounter with the reality of the Tokugawa caste system, not in a lecture or a scroll, but in your mouth. Historians still argue whether Edo's social classes were strictly enforced or simply deeply internalized. Across the city, the four main classes of Tokugawa society, samurai, farmers, artisans, and merchants, live like layers in a lacquer box. They are stacked, visible, separate. And yes, technically, merchants like this cook, the very people keeping the city alive, rank at the bottom. But here's the twist. They're often richer than the samurai they serve. You wonder if that's why he never smiled. You finish your meal and bow slightly, placing the empty bowl back on the counter with both hands. The cook accepts it wordlessly and returns to stirring the next pot. You wander toward a nearby market street, still rubbing the taste of pickled plum from your teeth. Here, the energy is sharper, the stalls are livelier, and the people, while still restrained, are more animated. Vendors call out their goods with practiced flair: dried squid, fermented bean paste, bundles of leeks and burdock root. You spot a woman carefully selecting yams, her toddler strapped to her back with a faded sash. She pauses and looks up at you. You're standing too close to the produce. You take a step back and bow in apology. She bows slightly in return, then goes back to her inspection. No words are exchanged, but the lesson is clear. Space is not just physical here, it's social. There are invisible boundaries around every basket of food, every family unit, every gesture, and you're constantly, accidentally bumping into them. A young boy nearby munches on something wrapped in rice paper. It looks sweet. You approach the stall and see rows of colorful treats, mochi cakes, bean jellies, and bright red candied fruits skewered on sticks. You ask the vendor, a wrinkled woman with kind eyes, how much? She looks you over and shrugs. 3 mun, she says. You hesitate. It's more than the porridge cost. She sees your pause and chuckles. Not hungry enough. Then she teases softly. You smile, shake your head and walk on. The smell of sugar clings to your nose. Farther along, you spot a man sitting behind a cart, holding a scroll. He's reading aloud, not loudly, but with a steady rhythm. A few people have gathered around, listening while nibbling plain rice crackers. The story is dramatic, something about a deceitful daughter-in-law and a loyal ghost. You stand at the edge of the group, pretending not to be out of place. When the story ends, the man bows deeply and lays the scroll across his lap. A basket is passed around. A few coins drop in. You drop one in too, not because you understood everything, but because it felt polite. The man nods at you. May your stomach stay full, he says, a blessing as old as the city itself. You continue walking, your feet growing sore against the straw sandals. You hear someone shout from behind a curtain, probably scolding a child. Then laughter, then silence again. As you turn the corner, you smell something rich and savory, soy sauce, broth, and maybe even miso, but the scent vanishes as quickly as it came. Someone closes a wooden shutter with a gentle clack. Private meals, hidden tastes, behind doors. There's more flavor than you'll ever be allowed to try. You realize this is how hunger works in Edo, not just in your stomach, but in your eyes, your nose, your memory. You get enough to live, just never quite enough to feel full. By midday, people begin returning indoors. The city slows. There is no lunchtime as you know it. Meals are brief, taken standing or crouched, swallowed with water and washed down with silence. The sun climbs higher, but you feel low. Your body is awake, but your energy wavers. You've done nothing strenuous, yet you feel like you've marched uphill since dawn. It's not just the food or the lack of it, it's the effort. Every interaction requires precision. Every moment feels borrowed. You settle beside a well where the breeze briefly returns. You pull your knees to your chest, trying to disappear. You think of that grilled fish again, of the sweetness of mochi, of things you're not allowed to have. Maybe you could grow used to it. Maybe, given time, but you already miss salt. You don't sit long at the well. The sound of wooden shutters creaking open again draws your attention, and you rise, dusting off your robe and adjusting your sandals. The market lull is brief. Edo doesn't sleep in the middle of the day. Not really. It just exhales, then breathes in again. You follow a steady stream of people toward the heart of the merchant quarter, drawn by the clatter of carts, the sing-song of vendors, and the faint tang of vinegar and smoke. This is Nihonbashi, the street of 1,000 trades. Well, not literally 1,000, but it certainly feels that way. Stalls stretch for blocks in both directions, everyone bursting with wares, lacquerware, lanterns, baskets, fans, gaita sandals, writing brushes, and rolls of patterned cotton fabric stacked high like folded clouds. You pass them all, eyes wide, trying not to look too impressed, because even admiration is something you're supposed to express with restraint here. You stop at a storefront where 2 artisans are shaving blocks of sandalwood into combs. The shavings fall in soft curls that smell faintly of temples. One of them uses a blade so fine it looks like he's sculpting steam. You watch in silence. No one speaks. That's part of the unspoken agreement between craftsman and passerby. Admire, don't interrupt. The streets here are cleaner, better maintained, not because they're patrolled more, but because reputation is currency. A well-kept facade signals respectability. A crooked sign or chipped roof tile might suggest disorder, and disorder invites the attention of inspectors. You pause at a fabric shop with indigo-dyed bolts hanging like tapestries. A young apprentice sweeps the entrance. He's careful not to let a single leaf rest on the mat. You glance at the banner above the door, but it says little, just a crest, and the word Wakabayashi. You remember that merchant signs are regulated here, restricted in size, shape, and even color. Too bold, and the local magistrate might call it vanity. Too plain, and you risk invisibility. It's a careful balance, like everything else in Edo. A woman walks by with her arms full of scrolls. You step aside just in time. She doesn't glance at you. Her robe is clean but undecorated. A scholar's wife, maybe, or a teacher in disguise. Literacy is more common than you thought, but access to books is still a privilege. Historians still argue whether merchants were cultural suppressors or unlikely patrons of Edo's flourishing arts. At the next corner, you find a tofu seller balancing twin buckets on a yoke, sloshing white liquid as he calls out, "Tofu, morning made, still warm." The smell is pungent, almost metallic. You pretend not to flinch. A little girl runs to him with a wooden bowl. He pours a ladleful, and she grins like it's candy. There's rhythm here. Everyone has their role, their pace, their volume. Even the noise is orderly. You turn and wander down a side street where the sun slants between eaves, casting stripes on the dirt road. It's quieter here, more specialized. You pass a shop that sells only writing brushes, racks and racks of them, thin ones for poetry, thick ones for business ledgers. Next door is a man who only sharpens blades. His hands are wrapped in cloth, his fingers ink-stained from lifting lacquered hilts. Another sells incense. You don't see him, just the smell leaking through the paper screen, frankincense and sandalwood, a whisper of cloves. Then a tiny storefront no wider than a doorway. Inside, a man paints fish, not real ones, gyotaku, fish press prints. He presses fresh fish against rice paper, brushes ink delicately over the scales, and reveals their ghostly imprint. For customers? For himself? You don't ask. You just watch as the shape of a mackerel slowly appears from nothing. The strangest thing about this place isn't the volume of labor, it's the quiet devotion to it. No one rushes, no one shouts. Even at their busiest, they're precise. You stop again at a stall selling small charms, bells, amulets, cloth talismans. A woman gestures to you and holds up a charm embroidered with the character for luck. You consider buying it, then think better. Who are you to ask for luck when you've already had enough not to get scolded this morning? She seems to understand. She smiles anyway and teases the charm gently to your sash. Just look like you belong, she says. You bow, unsure whether to leave it on. As you continue down the avenue, you realize that nothing here exists in isolation. The fan maker buys bamboo from the basket weaver. The paper shop gets its pulp from the dye shop. Even the rice cracker vendor depends on the charcoal merchant, and the salt seller, and the brush maker who paints the label. It's a city built not on marble or steel, but on interdependence. Still, this prosperity is fragile. At any moment, the shogunate could decide a trade is too luxurious, too tempting to peasants or samurai, and shut it down. A shop could lose its license. A guild could be dissolved. Success here is like walking a tightrope, rewarding, but always just a slip away from ruin. You stop at one final stall where a man is carving small wooden dolls. Not for children, you learn. These are gosho ningyo, gifts for nobility, symbolic, stylized babies with plump faces and absurdly smooth skin. He's painting tiny dots for pupils using a brush with a single hair. He looks up and catches you staring. Practice, he says, and knowing when to breathe. You nod, unsure how else to respond. And just like that, he's back to painting. You leave the merchant quarter behind as the sun leans westward. Your feet ache, your senses are full, and still, you feel like you've missed more than you've seen. Edo's trades aren't just goods, they're mirrors. Every fan, sandal, and soy bottle reflects something. Duty, status, pride, resilience. You can buy things here, yes, but you can't escape who you're expected to be. You cross back into a quieter street where a paperboy calls out headlines from a printed broadsheet. You can't read it. Doesn't matter. Everyone already knows the news. The rules haven't changed, and neither have you. Not yet. As the merchant stalls fade into the distance, and the scent of grilled soy and fresh ink gives way to the smell of soil and thatched roofs. You find yourself leaving Edo's dense heart behind. The crowds thin, the roads widen slightly, but the atmosphere thickens. You've wandered into the outer district, where the city blurs into farmland, where Edo's true backbone begins. This is where the Hyakusho, or peasants, live. The word peasant feels too flat, too foreign on your tongue. You expect misery, rags, filth, thus maybe a scythe in one hand and despair in the other. But that isn't what you see. These people are weathered, yes, but orderly. Their homes are modest but clean. The vegetable plots are tidy. There's rhythm here, just like in the city, but it's slower, grounded. You pass a man kneeling by a shallow ditch, clearing it of leaves. His motions are steady, practiced, reverent. Then you notice the rice paddies. They stretch like flat mirrors across the low-lying land, dotted with green stalks. Every angle is intentional. The embankments are narrow but precise. You realize this isn't just food. This is tax. Because here in Edo-Era Japan, rice isn't simply sustenance. It's currency. It's obedience. It's survival. You pause at a water wheel, its creaking rhythm echoing against the low mountains in the distance. A woman nearby washes radishes in the runoff. She hums softly, the tune older than she is. You bow, and she returns it with a nod before turning back to her work. You're beginning to understand something. These people are the engine of the city, but they are kept far from its rewards. They labor under quotas set by men they'll never meet, enforced by officials they rarely see. The rice they grow is counted not in bowls, but in koku, a unit used to measure not hunger, but taxation. Historians still argue whether the peasants were crushed by this burden or quietly mastered it. You trail behind a wooden cart as it creaks along a dirt road. It's pulled by two men. Not oxen. You want to help, but you know better. Here, status is protection, but it is also armor, and interfering, even kindly, can be misread. You pass children with mud-streaked knees chasing a bamboo hoop. They laugh as it wobbles off the path, and one of them nearly bowls into you before skidding to a stop. He bows quickly, then darts back to the game. No apology, just instinct. Further along, you see a small family kneeling before a stone shrine tucked beneath an old pine. There are a few offerings, dried chestnuts, a folded bit of rice paper, a coin half buried in the soil. The father claps twice, bows deeply, then presses his hands together. The children follow, awkward but sincere. They're not asking for wealth, just good weather. You keep walking. At a roadside hut, you spot a farmer adjusting the harness on a shaggy ox. His robe is patched at the knees. His hands are like bark. He looks up and waves, not broadly, just a brief flick of the wrist. You return the gesture and step closer. He eyes you curiously. Samurai? You shake your head. He nods again. Merchant, then again. You shake your head. He grins now. Then you must be lost. So you smile. He isn't wrong. You ask if he finds the work hard. He shrugs. It's not about hard, he says. It's about enough. He wipes his forehead. Some years, the sky listens. Some years, he doesn't say more. He doesn't need to. You help him lift a wooden yoke onto the ox's shoulders. He doesn't stop you, doesn't thank you either, just nods once and clicks his tongue. The ox lumbers forward, dragging a short plow through the dirt. You continue along the path, passing a sign posted at a crossroads. The calligraphy is sharp and formal, stamped with the mark of a regional official. It lists rice quotas for the season, percentages, weights, deadlines. Below it is a list of punishments for failure: increased taxes, confiscation, public shaming, labor, and, in rare cases, execution. Oh, you wonder how often the last one is used. Near a row of vegetable fields, you see an old man sorting sweet potatoes by size. He moves slowly, his breath audible. Next to him, a young woman, his daughter, maybe, grinds soybeans into paste with a stone mill. She doesn't pause as you pass. Her sleeves are rolled tight, her shoulders dusted with powdery starch. There's no small talk here, no greetings. Everyone is busy, and to interrupt labor is to challenge purpose. So you bow silently and walk on. At a small stream, you pause to drink. The water is cool, clear, and slightly metallic. You wash your hands, cupping your palms the way you saw the children do earlier. A dragonfly lands briefly on your knee, then darts off. Nature here doesn't care what class you are, and yet the laws do. In Edo, Japan, peasants were considered the second highest class, above merchants. Even in theory, they were honored for feeding the nation, but in practice, they were monitored, fined, and expected to remain where they were permanently. To leave your village without permission could mean arrest. To dress above your station could mean lashes. Even smiling too confidently at a passing official could be seen as disrespect. Still, there's a quiet pride here. You see it in the way rows are planted perfectly straight, in the shine of polished tools, in the hands that work without complaint. You watch as two men finish repairing a segment of dike, tamping it down with wooden blocks. When they finish, one of them straightens up and wipes his brow with a cloth. He looks over at you. "Edo needs food," he says simply. Then he picks up a hoe and returns to work. As you begin walking back toward the city's edge, you glance over your shoulder once more. The patties shimmer. The water wheels turn. The carts creak forward, and behind every grain of rice, there's someone bent at the waist, giving a piece of themselves to a city that may never remember their names. You breathe in the scent of warm earth and drying straw. You understand now, being a peasant in Edo isn't tragic. It's exhausting, invisible, and relentless. It's giving everything, every day. For a bowl that might be half full, you keep walking. The road back into the city hums beneath your feet as you re-enter the edge of Edo proper. You feel the change before you see it. The fields end, the smell of wet soil fades. The road stiffens beneath you, stone in places, tamped earth in others. Houses grow tighter again. Shadows return between narrow alleys. You pass two boys crouched outside a silk shop, not playing but watching, waiting for a customer, perhaps. Their robes are neat but plain, nothing extravagant. Their hair is shaved in the front, tied in a top knot in the back, a style dictated not by fashion, but by status. You realize suddenly that nothing in Edo is truly chosen, not your hair, not your home, and certainly not your occupation. Jobs here aren't dreams, they're legacies. A man born to a family of lantern makers will become a lantern maker, just like his father and grandfather. A woman born to a sake brewer will spend her life measuring rice and stirring vats of fermenting mash. There is no career pivot, no grand reinvention. The path you walk is mostly drawn before you ever take your first steps. You reach a cluster of workshops and pose to watch a family dip lengths of cloth into deep blue vats. The liquid stains their hands and fingernails. The eldest daughter stretches the cloth onto bamboo poles to dry. Her fingers are quick, graceful. She might be 17, maybe 18, but she's already more skilled than you'll ever be at anything. Historians still argue whether this rigidity was oppressive or a kind of generational artistry. You try to picture yourself at that vat, day after day, for the rest of your life. Would your hands remember what your mind could not? Would you learn to find beauty in the repetition, or would the sameness unmake you? A bell rings down the street. You turn and spot two officials walking side by side, wearing dark robes with crests stitched in pale thread. Behind them trails a clerk holding a lacquered board. They're checking clothing. You freeze. No one panics, but subtle movements ripple around you. A woman ducks into a doorway. A shopkeeper hurries to roll up a silk bolt. Two children flatten themselves against a wall. You've done nothing wrong. You're dressed plainly, as any visitor should be, but you still feel their eyes brush past you like cold wind, not out of suspicion, just assessment, classification. The officials stop in front of a man with a beautiful brocade sash. It's deep green with golden thread, far too fine for a commoner. One of the officials raises an eyebrow. The man bows quickly, pulling the sash off without a word. He hands it over, and the officials move on. No scolding, no explanation, just a silent reminder. Because in Edo, your clothing says who you are and who you're not. You walk on, pulling your own sleeves a little tighter. Colors here are coded. If you're a merchant, you wear browns, grays, dull blues. If you're a samurai, you might wear subdued blacks, navy, or a whisper of plum. Peasants wear what's cheapest and most durable, hemp or coarse cotton, undyed or faded. Silk is reserved for those who carry blades or bear titles, and even then, not always in public. And it's not just color, sleeve length, the way a robe is folded, the width of a sash. It's all regulated. Even patterns can carry meaning. Cranes, waves, pine needles. A child in the wrong print could bring shame on a household. You pass a tailor's shop where a woman embroiders tiny maple leaves onto a child's robe. Her stitches are so small they look like shadows. She doesn't look up. She's following a template, one she's likely repeated hundreds of times. It's beautiful, but not expressive, not in the way you're used to. Expression here isn't encouraged. Accuracy is. You stop in front of a mirror, bronze, rippling slightly. You study your reflection. Plain robe, simple sash, clean but unremarkable, safe, forgettable. And that's the point. Clothing isn't fashion here. It's permission, down another street. You pass a row of shops that specialize in gaita, wooden sandals raised on two slats. There are dozens of styles. Some are light and narrow, designed for fast movement. Others are heavy and tall, built to keep hems out of the mud. A man in the shop explains to a customer how sandal height once indicated wealth, more slats meant more prestige, but now it mostly just means better arch support. You keep walking. In a narrow alley, you spot a line of workers crouched beside an indigo dye vat. Their robes are so thoroughly stained they look almost black. They don't speak. The air smells of minerals and wet cloth. One of them glances up, eyes rimmed with fatigue. He doesn't smile. He doesn't need to. He already knows. You're just passing through. You turn a corner and nearly collide with a young woman hurrying in the opposite direction. Her robe is neat but plain, sleeves tied back with a strip of cloth. She bows automatically, apologetic, but not submissive. Her hair is pinned with a single wooden comb. You wonder what her story is. Does she work in a tea house, a print shop? Is she rushing because she's late, or because being late would be seen as disgraceful? You don't ask. You just bow back and let her pass. It begins to drizzle. You didn't notice the clouds until now. People pull their sleeves higher, wrap scarves around their shoulders. No umbrellas appear. Most can't afford them. A few shopkeepers pull awnings down. The streets become quieter, the scent of wet wood rising all around you. You find shelter beneath the overhang of a tofu stall. The owner gives you a brief nod, not unkind. You watch the rain fall, steady and thin. For a moment, you wonder what it would be like to settle here, to belong, to wear a robe that says something clear and true about your place in the world. To stop guessing what's allowed and just know. But that thought fades as quickly as the rain begins to lighten, because deep down, you know, belonging in Edo means more than speaking the language or following the rules. It means accepting that you are not your own, not your job, not your clothes, not even your silence. You step back into the street and keep walking. The rain leaves behind a sheen on the cobblestones, softening the dust and releasing the scent of damp wood and clay. As you continue walking, a warm plume of steam curls toward you from the next street over, beckoning you like a gentle hand. You follow it, drawn by something both primal and comforting. Bathing in Edo isn't a private affair. It's a necessity, a ritual, and whether you like it or not, a group activity. You arrive at the entrance to a public bathhouse, a sento. The Norin curtain flutters with a symbol for hot water, and your bare feet stick slightly to the wet wooden threshold as you step inside. Immediately, the humidity swallows you whole. The air is thick with heat and the faint scent of pine wood, mineral water, and human skin. Wooden lockers line the entryway, and a small elderly man, perhaps the attendant, waves you in without much interest. He barely glances up from his bamboo brush and ink ledger. One foot taps gently to a rhythm only he hears. You remove your robe awkwardly, self-conscious in a way no one else seems to be. Around you, other bathers, young, old, hunched, tall, stripped down with the casual rhythm of people who do this every day. A woman hums as she folds her towel. Two children chase each other with wooden ladles. No one covers themselves. No one stares. In Edo, the body is neither shameful nor special. It simply is. You clutch your small washcloth and step through the second curtain into the main chamber. The heat hits you like a breath. The room glows with candlelight flickering against wet tile and polished wood. The large, soaking tub in the center steams gently, its surface barely rippling. Around it, wooden buckets line the walls like sleeping turtles. You sit on a low stool at one of the spigots and begin to scrub. Not splash, scrub, because in Edo, you don't enter the bath dirty. That would be unthinkable. You pour ladle after ladle of warm water over yourself, using the rough cloth to wipe away the film of sweat, dust, and memory. Behind you, someone coughs, another hums a folk tune about plum blossoms and forgotten lovers. Your skin turns pink from the scrubbing. You've never been this clean in your life. Historians still argue whether the Edo bathhouse was more about hygiene or hierarchy, because this isn't just about cleanliness, it's about conformity. The bath is where your body is made to match your role, neat, contained, silent, unless spoken to. You feel it in the way people move around you, deliberate, non-intrusive, always giving just enough space but never too much. And then you notice something else. There's no gender barrier, not always. In many bathhouses, men and women bathe together, separated only by quiet social rules and an unwavering code of public discretion. It should feel strange, awkward, but it doesn't. The atmosphere is too matter-of-fact. The water doesn't care. Neither does anyone else. You finally slide into the main tub. The heat is shocking, almost unbearable. You stifle a gasp as the water reaches your chest. It burns at first, like being unwrapped and boiled all at once. But after a moment, your body goes slack, your muscles sigh, and the world narrows to this single sensation. Heat. You look around the tub. No one speaks. They soak, motionless, like statues thawing in slow water. A man with a scarred shoulder closes his eyes and exhales. A young girl rests her chin on the edge, eyes half closed. A grandmother pours water over her head with the rhythm of prayer. No clocks, no conversations, just the sound of water dripping and breath rising and falling like tides. You lean your head back against the wooden ledge and let your eyelids drop. This is the only time in Edo when stillness is not punished. You don't know how long you've been here when the attendant's voice cuts gently through the steam. Time's up. You rise slowly, legs a little unsteady, skin flushed like steamed rice. You bow your head to the others as you exit, and they nod back, brief, subtle. You've shared space, and now you'll leave it. You step into the cool air and immediately feel your pores tighten. A wave of goosebumps travels across your arms. You wrap the towel around your shoulders and retrieve your robe. The attendant hands you a small cup of barley tea. It's lukewarm, bitter, and perfect. Not too long, he says. Too long makes your heart float. You need, unsure if it's a proverb or a warning. Outside, the streets are damp and gleaming. Evening's breath has begun to settle over the rooftops. You walk with a new softness, like you've shed something invisible. The scent of soap clings faintly to your skin. Your mind feels lighter, quieter, and then you notice the bathhouse across the street. It's newer, brighter, fancier. A polished sign hangs over the door, and a small crowd of well-dressed patrons lingers near the entrance. An attendant bows low to each one as they enter. That's not a sento, that's a yuya, a more expensive, private-style bathhouse, sometimes bordering on entertainment. You watch as a samurai disappears behind the curtain, followed by a woman in a silk obi and a perfume so strong you can smell it from across the street. You understand the difference. You just left the bath that keeps people the same. This one promises something else: escape, indulgence, maybe even transgression, but not for you. You turn away, back toward the dimmer alleys. As you walk, you catch sight of a ragged boy pouring a bucket of rainwater over his head near a drain. He scrubs at his arms with a torn cloth, teeth clenched. You wonder if he's ever stepped inside a bathhouse at all. In Edo, the body may not be sacred, but it is always political. Your robe sticks to your still damp skin as you walk on, back into the city's rhythm. Lanterns are beginning to glow overhead, swinging on thin wires, trembling in the wind like silent warnings. And you, cleaner than you've ever been, step back into the streets with the quiet knowledge that even purity has rules here. The lanterns begin to burn brighter now, their warm orange glow thickening the evening shadows. Edo changes at dusk. The heat slips away. The crowds thin, but the air feels heavier, not lighter, as if the city exhales, but keeps something held back in its throat. Your skin is still slightly damp beneath your robe as you walk, drawn by the faint laughter echoing around corners and the rhythmic clack of sandals on stone. Somewhere ahead, a shamisen twangs a lopsided tune, sharp, then soft again. It leads you through a narrower street, where the houses lean closer, and the silence in between sounds feels more deliberate. You've found the tea house district. This is not the world of elite geisha and golden sake cups. This is a commoner's quarter, small shops, family-run tea rooms, wooden walls stained with the scent of roasted barley and years of whispered secrets. A Norin curtain hangs across a low doorway, painted with a single brush stroke of a bamboo shoot. You duck under it and enter. Inside, everything is warm, not just the lighting, but the feeling. There are only 4 tables, each with 2 cushions. A brazier glows gently in the corner. The scent of matcha subfills the space like fog. A middle-aged woman behind the counter bows as you enter, her smile thin but kind. She gestures you toward an open seat, and you kneel onto the cushion, wincing just a little. Your knees still ache from earlier. Across from you, a young man in a faded robe sits reading a folded sheet of paper, probably a cheap novella or printed gossip rag. He glances up, gives the briefest nod, then returns to his page. You don't speak, not yet. This is a place where speaking before tea is like walking into a room without bowing. It marks you. She brings you a small lacquered tray with a ceramic bowl. The tea inside is vibrant green and slightly foamy. You bow and whisper thanks, even though she's already walking away. You take a sip. It's bitter, earthy. It clings to your tongue like dust. And yet, it feels right, like it's cleaning the corners of your mouth that words don't reach. Someone in the corner begins to speak. At first, you think it's a conversation, but it's not. It's a story, a ghost story. The man's voice is low, gravelly, and just theatrical enough to make the room lean closer. He tells of a woman who drowned herself in the Kanda River after her lover betrayed her, only to return each night, dripping wet, knocking on his door, her eyes full of moonlight and mold. He smiles slightly. She asked him why he hadn't come, even though she was still waiting. A few people shiver, but no one laughs. One woman sips her tea too quickly and coughs into her sleeve. You realize now, tea tea houses are not just for drinking, they're for remembering, for imagining, for unwinding the rules just enough to let something strange through the cracks. Historians still argue whether these stories were a form of resistance or release. You're halfway through your bowl when the young man across from you lowers his paper and finally speaks. You're not from this ward. It's not a question. You shake your head. Just passing through? He nods, as if that explains everything. The river ghost is real, he says. At least, the place is. There's a shrine there now. People leave combs for her. You smile. Does it work? He shrugs. Depends what you want. Another silence. Comfortable this time. Then he adds, that's how people in Edo live long. We tell ghosts what we're afraid to tell the living. You think about that for a moment. The tea house owner approaches again, this time with a small plate of sweets. Just two, pale pink mochi filled with red bean paste. She places them in the center, bows slightly, and walks away. Neither of you move to eat first. The man across from you nods toward the door. See the woman outside, sitting near the lantern? You glance discreetly through the bamboo blinds. A woman with a straw hat pulled low is seated beside the stone lantern, facing away from the street. Her robe is patterned with cranes in flight. She comes here every week, he says. Same day. Never speaks. Just waits until closing. Why? No one asks anymore? He shrugs. Some think she's waiting for someone. Others say she already knows he's not coming back. You both go quiet again. The story of the ghost is done. Another patron has started talking about taxes, grain prices, and some incident with a bribe in the merchant guild. The energy shifts. Gossip is the second course in this place, softer than politics, but tastier than rice. Someone mutters a joke about an official's new concubine who's supposedly smarter than his accountant. A few people chuckle into their sleeves. The tea house owner smiles without looking up from her ledger. You realize that this is one of the few places in Edo where speaking freely doesn't require armor, but only if you know when to stop. You finish your tea. It's cooler now, more mellow. The matcha residue clings to the bottom in a lazy spiral. You set the bowl down carefully and reach for the mochi, bowing slightly to your quiet companion as you do. He takes the other one without a word. The sweetness is subtle, the red bean paste smooth, the rice cake slightly chewy. You chew slowly, deliberately, as if your body understands this is one of the rare indulgences you're allowed here. Outside, the woman in the crane robe is still waiting. A breeze picks up and lifts the edge of her hat, revealing nothing but her profile, still calm, unreadable. You rise and bow once more to the tea house owner as you leave. She returns the gesture, already turning back to the kettle, where steam curls like questions. You step back into the street. The sky is now a deeper shade of indigo. The wind smells faintly of moss and ash. The laughter from the tea house fades behind you, like the last few notes of a lullaby. And in your chest, a quiet ache begins to bloom, not sadness exactly, but a sort of longing. For what? You're not sure. Maybe for a ghost, maybe for a place at a table where you don't have to say anything to be understood, maybe just another bowl of tea, still warm. You keep walking through the deepening twilight, the streets narrower now, carved by time and the careful scuffle of wooden sandals. The quiet has changed. It's no longer the hush of evening. It's the pressure of unspoken rules tightening like a sash. You pass a man unloading sake barrels, and though he's older than you, he bows first. You respond with a bow just slightly deeper, hoping it's the right amount, not too humble, not too proud. Then you wonder, was he a merchant or a farmer dressed as one? Should you have bowed first? Welcome to Edo, where manners can maim you, not physically, perhaps not always, but in Edo, social missteps aren't embarrassing, they're dangerous. Every interaction is a calculation. How long to hold a bow, how wide to open a door, when to speak, when to look away. These aren't pleasantries, they're weapons, tools, shields. A misplaced gesture can insult, a misplaced silence can enrage. And often, the worst part is, you won't know what you did wrong until it's far too late. You pass two men in conversation outside a lantern shop. One of them is rigid, voice calm, but there's an edge to his tone. His companion, slightly hunched, hands tucked in his sleeves, nods rapidly, too rapidly. Something's wrong. The rigid man finishes his sentence, then turns and walks away without bowing. The other man stands there, motionless, face pale. You don't need to know the words. You've felt that kind of cold before. Historians still argue whether Edo's rigid etiquette preserved peace or masked 1,000 quiet wars. You duck into a side street where a woman sells bundles of incense from a mat. She doesn't call out to you. She doesn't need to. Her posture says everything. I am here. I have value. You may notice me if it pleases you. You kneel and pick up a bundle wrapped in paper. This one, she tilts her head. For prayer. She says softly, or apologies. You nod, unsure which one you need more. As you rise to leave, she adds, almost as an afterthought, careful with your words tonight. The moon is watching. It's a phrase that sounds like folklore, but here could just as easily be protocol. You return to the main road and nearly collide with a young samurai exiting a tobacco shop. He's no older than 20, but his gaze has the weight of generations. His left hand rests near the hilt of his katana. His right hand adjusts the corner of his sleeve. He stares at you for a moment. Your body reacts faster than your mind, bowing, low, steady, longer than usual. You lower your eyes, but not so much that it looks groveling. You count silently, 1, 2, 3, then rise. He says nothing, just nods once and keeps walking. You exhale, heart ticking like a tea kettle. That was not respect. That was survival. Because a samurai, any samurai, can legally kill a commoner who disrespects him. It's called Kirisute Gomen, the right to cut down, rarely used, but always remembered. And even if they don't draw their blade, their words can cut just as sharply. A misplaced insult from a man like that could ruin a shop's reputation, bring shame to a family, dissolve a pending marriage. The sword is often the least dangerous thing they carry. You wander into a district filled with paper shops and brush sellers. Everything smells like ink. A child recites poems under her breath beside her mother's stall, eyes wide with concentration. You smile gently. She bows, not too deep, just enough to acknowledge your presence and erase it at the same time. It's humbling how easily a child can outmaneuver you in etiquette. You turn a corner and find yourself face to face with an old friend of the city. Silence. Here, the street is lined with wealth, low walls, manicured trees, quiet gates. You've entered the samurai compound district. No music, no children. Even the wind seems to tread lightly. A man in fine robes stands in front of a gate, speaking softly to a servant. You don't understand the exchange, but the servant bows 4 times in rapid succession, each one more severe than the last. His voice trembles as he responds. The samurai finally nods and walks away. The servant doesn't move until the man has turned the corner. Then he sags, just slightly. He adjusts his robe and continues sweeping the path with stiff arms. You think again about what the incense vendor said. The moon is watching. It feels true now. The street is silver with light, everything exposed. You're suddenly hyper-aware of your posture, your hands, your breathing. You pass a woman carrying a baby on her back. The child stares at you with wide eyes, then giggles. The woman gasps and bows deeply, apologizing before you can say anything. You're not offended, but someone else might have been, because in Edo, even a baby's laughter can be read as rudeness. You stop near a wooden bridge where 2 men are arguing, not loudly, not physically. Their tones are level, their words precise, but their bows are getting shorter, tighter, their voices colder. You listen, trying to make sense of the exchange. One of them mentions a wedding gift arriving late. The other counters that it was early by the lunar calendar. A third man steps between them and offers a solution. Acknowledge both timelines. They agree, bow, and part ways. No one raised a voice. But you know, they were inches from social ruin. Back in the merchant quarter, you see a crowd gathered around a puppet stage. A man is performing a comedy about a lazy official who trips over his own sword while bowing too low. The crowd laughs, cautiously. It's only acceptable because it's art, because the puppet holds the insult, not the puppeteer. You watch for a while, then slip away, thinking of every bow you've made today, every one you may have gotten wrong. You glance up at the moon. She says nothing, but she sees everything. You pass under the pale gaze of the moon and step into a different silence. This street feels heavier somehow, not just in sound, but in air. The houses are larger here. Their wooden walls are freshly lacquered, their roofs steep and unbroken. Even the shadows seem sharper. Nothing slouches, nothing leans. You've entered the domain of the samurai. They live not in sprawling mansions, but in disciplined elegance. Homes are built for function, for honor, and for being watched. A single bamboo leaf out of place here could be a metaphor, an insult, even. You walk slower without meaning to. Your feet soften, as if trying to erase your own presence. Ahead, 2 men in matching crested robes walk side by side. Their hands rest casually on their daisho, the paired swords no one else in the city is permitted to carry. They don't speak. They don't have to. Their existence is a sentence complete in itself, and you're not part of it. You lower your eyes and move to the edge of the street. This is not fear, not quite. It's awareness. A samurai's entire life revolves around giri, duty to their lord, to their code, to their family name. That sounds noble until you remember it includes the duty to kill, if not others, than themselves. Because in Edo, a samurai would rather end their own life than tarnish it. You walk past a gate, where an old man sits sweeping ash from a brazier. He wears no swords, but his bearing is unmistakable. He's a retired samurai. His back is straight, and his eyes are slow, calculating. He watches you, not unkindly, but he watches. A young boy approaches and bows. The man corrects his posture gently, then offers a tip about grip strength. The boy nods, then bows again, deeper this time. Even in rest, the samurai train, but not all swords stay within gates. Just as you reach the end of the samurai quarter, the air shifts again. The houses become leaner, the walls flaking. You smell sake more than incense. Voices rise not with grace, but grit. You've entered the world of the Ronin, masterless samurai. These men once served lords who fell in battle or committed offenses that led to exile. Some refused to follow orders that violated their code. Others simply lost status through misfortune, and now they wander, armed and unanchored, haunted by a title without a tether. You pass one leaning against a doorway, his robe untied at the collar, his blade tied with frayed cord instead of silk. He eyes you, more curious than threatening. A child calls out to him from inside, and he grunts a reply that sounds like affection. Then he lights a pipe. No one bows here, not because they're rude, but because no one wants to risk implying hierarchy in a space where everyone has already lost theirs. Historians still argue whether Ronin were outlaws or honorable exiles. You walk on and see two Ronin seated under the awning of a sake stall. One has a nose crooked from too many fights. The other has hands that tremble ever so slightly, maybe age, maybe something else. They speak in hushed tones, not about battle, but about rent. You realize something painful. The line between feared warrior and failed man is a single coin's width. The samurai live under roofs, paid for by their lords. Ronin pay their own way, or not at all. Some become teachers. Others sell their sword hands to whoever can afford them. A few fall into darker trades, gambling, protection rackets, even assassination. You pass a notice board plastered with flyers. One reads, "Seeking guard for rice transport, strong sword arm, little talk." Another says, "Lessons in Kenjutsu available, honest coin only." The paper flaps slightly in the wind. Each one is a hand reaching out from a cracked identity. At the far end of the street, a Ronin is giving a demonstration. His blade slices through the air with practiced elegance. A group of boys watch, wide-eyed, mimicking his movements with sticks. One stumbles, nearly falling onto his face. The Ronin sheathes his sword, crouches down, and whispers something to the boy, just loud enough for you to hear. Balance comes from knowing when not to strike. You're not sure if he's talking about swordplay or something deeper. The boy nods solemnly. As you turn a corner, the scent of grilled meat hits you. A tiny skewer stall run by a bent old woman stands in the glow of a lantern. Two Ronin sit beside it, sharing silence between bites. You hear them speak only once, when one raises his sake cup and mutters, "To lords who died, and ones who didn't deserve us." The other taps his cup gently in reply. You suddenly realize how heavy a sword must feel when there's no one left to command it. Your footsteps take you back toward the boundary between districts, where the ordered lines of the samurai quarter meet the frayed edges of Ronin territory. There's no wall, no gate, but the difference is unmistakable. You glance back once, just as one of the ronin looks up. He nods at you, not with deference, not with threat, just acknowledgement. Two strangers walk in the same city under different rules. You step forward into the better lit streets, where paper lanterns sway like sleepy fireflies, and the night's stillness hums with things unsaid. You don't carry a sword, but tonight it feels like everyone does, some of them just sharper than others. You hear it before you see it, a low drum beat, pulsing like a second heartbeat beneath the city's measured silence. It draws you forward, through alleys rimmed with flickering lanterns and past closed shutters that seem to lean closer, as if listening in. Then another sound joins, flutes, thin, high, trembling with joy or warning. You're not sure which. You turn a corner, and there it is, a festival in full bloom, blooming like it's trying to outrun something. Bright streamers dangle from wooden poles. The smell of grilled eel and sweet miso fills the air. Children run in loops, faces smeared with red bean paste. Women in patterned yukata laugh softly behind fans. Men drink and shout in rhythms that rise and fall like waves. It's beautiful, it's loud, it's dangerous, because this kind of gathering wasn't officially approved. You can tell by what's missing. No magistrates, no guards, no banners bearing the crest of the city office. Just people, too many of them, too freely gathered. In Edo, even joy has limits. You hesitate at the edge of the crowd, but the smell of the food, the music, the warmth, after a day full of scrutiny and posture, it's too inviting. You step in, almost immediately. A woman presses a small cup of sake into your hand. She's wearing bright yellow with faded cranes embroidered at the hem. Her cheeks are pink from drink, and her eyes shine with something wild. Drink before someone asks what you're doing here, she says, not unkindly. You do. It burns just enough to make you forget your name. You wander among the stalls, each one brighter than the next. Pickled ginger, roasted chestnuts, candied lotus roots. Children toss small rings onto bamboo sticks and wind whistles shaped like carp. A man spins paper fans faster than you thought possible, flinging them into the air, catching them behind his back, making the crowd cheer, and beneath it all, those drums. You turn a corner and find their source, a group of young men circling a platform, pounding taiko drums with such energy it shakes the wooden stage beneath them. One breaks into dance mid-beat, swirling his sash overhead. Another whistles loudly, calling out a chant you don't recognize. They're too good, too polished. This isn't spontaneous, it's practiced, which means it's organized, and that means someone's watching. You move on, slower now, eyes sharper. There's something simmering beneath the joy here. You start noticing the clusters of people who aren't laughing, the men who don't seem to be buying anything, just standing, arms folded, eyes always scanning. You pass two of them. One leans into the other and murmurs something too soft to catch. They glance your way. You look down at your empty sake cup, then toss it into a barrel of water meant for extinguishing lantern fires. A voice calls out behind you. Not from here, are you? You turn. The woman from earlier, the one who handed you the drink, is back. Her smile is still playful, but her eyes have sobered. You're walking like someone who thinks this is a real festival. You frown. Isn't it? She tilts her head. It's real, just not official. Another voice cuts in, low and close. He doesn't know. A man steps out from behind a stall. He's older, robe loose at the collar, but his posture tells you everything. Former samurai, maybe not even former. His sword hilt is wrapped in plain cloth. No ornamentation. He's just passing through, the woman says. The man studies you, then steps back into the shadow. You can feel the warning in the space he leaves behind. Historians still argue whether festivals like these were cultural rebellion or pressure valves allowed by the authorities. You edge away, heart quickening. You pass a stall where someone's selling poems written in charcoal on rice paper. The words blur in your vision. Another turn, and you stumble into a dance circle. You're surrounded before you realize it. People clapping, swaying, a flute squeals. Someone hands you a fan. You wave it awkwardly, trying to mimic the steps. Left foot, turn, bow, laugh. You feel eyes on you, some amused, some assessing. You wonder, is this the joy of the people or the testing ground of something else? Then, just as suddenly as it began, the music stutters. A whisper cuts through the crowd. Bansha no kanjin. Foreign observer. Not you, someone else. But it spreads like smoke. The drums stop. The laughter tightens. The woman reappears beside you, whispers, "Go now." Before you get asked questions you don't have the words for. You move. You weave through the thinning crowd, dodging lantern poles and overturned crates. Behind you, a group of men begins rolling up their wares faster than festival speed allows. A drunk stumbles into a stack of buckets. No one helps him up. You reach the edge of the street and slip back into the darkness of the alley you came from. Your breath is loud now, too loud. You glance back once. The music has resumed, but softer, subdued. The joy is still there, but it's on a leash. You keep walking, heart still thudding. In Edo, even happiness is an act of choreography. Too much of it, too loud, too long, and you're asking for someone in a crested robe to ask where your permit is. You pass a wall with red graffiti chalked low near the base. It's shaped like a drum, nothing else. You don't stop to admire it. You just move. Later, you hear someone say the festival honored a historical battle, one the shogunate no longer wants remembered. Later, you'll learn that the woman in the yellow yukata hasn't been seen since that night. Later, you'll understand that rebellion in Edo doesn't wear banners. It wears smiles, fans, lanterns. Tonight, you just understand that some invitations aren't meant for outsiders. You return to quieter streets, the distant drums still tapping at the edge of your memory. This city dances with its own secrets, and sometimes the only thing more dangerous than breaking the rules is not knowing where they begin. You leave the sounds of the festival behind you, but they don't really leave. They trail you like the smell of burned sake or the faint throb of a drum still echoing beneath your ribs. As you turn onto a quieter lane, the lanterns grow fewer, the laughter fades, the streets return to form. You've wandered into a merchant quarter again, though this one is older, more subdued. The storefronts are closed now, wooden shutters bolted and roofs hunched like elderly shoulders. Still, candlelight leaks from behind thin shoji screens, and somewhere, The soft scrape of slippers on floorboards tells you life continues even after the doors close. A figure ahead bows and motions you toward a modest, two-story house. You hesitate, but his robe is patterned with the emblem of a local guild, a rice trader's crest. This is not a trap. It's hospitality, or at least obligation. You step inside. The room smells faintly of sandalwood and pickled vegetables. The entryway is clean, but not ornate. Your host, short, tidy, nervous, asks almost nothing. He simply slides the door shut behind you and gestures toward the sitting room. You remove your sandals and step up onto the polished wooden floor. A young woman enters silently, kneeling to serve tea with eyes lowered. Her hands move precisely. One turn of the teacup, 2 fingers beneath, never touching the rim. She offers no smile, no greeting, just presence. You sit on a cushion and bow your head in return. The air feels thin in here, not because of heat or cold, but because of what isn't being said. The merchant finally clears his throat. "You must be tired," he says. You nod politely, though he doesn't wait for a reply. We do not often host travelers, especially those without a house name. That hangs in the air a beat too long. You answer carefully. "I'm only passing through." He bows slightly, accepting the explanation, or pretending to. The line is thin here. You take a sip of tea. It's strong, roasted barley again, slightly bitter, slightly nutty. Across from you, the merchant's wife appears. She bows low and kneels, placing a small dish of pickled burdock in front of you. Then, just as quickly, she leaves. The room remains quiet. In Edo, most communication in a household happens without words. The position of a serving tray, the pace of a servant's step, whether the door slides fully closed or just partially. Tonight, every door closes fully. You're allowed to eat with them, though no one speaks during the meal. You chew slowly, matching their pace. You study their postures, the slight bow of the shoulders, the exact 45-degree angle of their arms. Even their chewing is rhythmic. You're beginning to suspect that homes in Edo are not for comfort, they're for containment. Historians still argue whether the household was a refuge or a prison. After dinner, you're offered a place in the back room. A futon is already prepared, perfectly aligned on the tatami mat. There's a wooden pillow, a thin blanket, and a small oil lamp that flickers with a stubborn flame. Before you sleep, your host pauses at the doorway. He doesn't enter. He simply bows and murmurs, "Please do not open the sliding door after second bell. We've already reported your stay to the magistrate." You nod, not sure what part of that sentence is meant to be reassuring. When the door slides closed, it does so with the faintest click, like the lock on a thought. You lie on the futon, staring up at the ceiling beams, which groan softly in the night air. Every surface around you seems built for silence. The walls are made of paper, the floors of wood that creak only when walked on correctly. Even the air feels folded. Somewhere in the house, a child coughs, a door opens, closes, then nothing. And still, you do not sleep. You sit up, heart tapping a little harder than before. You listen, no footsteps, no voices, just the wind outside, brushing against the wooden slats. You reach for the oil lamp and raise it just slightly, its light illuminating the edge of the sliding door. You're not supposed to open it. You were told not to, but of course, that's why you do. Gently, you push it open just a crack, and beyond it, nothing. No hallway, just a screen, another wall hastily erected. The space outside your room is not a corridor at all, but a box, a holding place, not for safety, for separation. You slide it closed again, more carefully this time. Later, you will realize this is common, not out of cruelty, but caution. Visitors, especially unfamiliar ones, are often hosted in rooms where they cannot see the rest of the home, where they are not seen, not fully, because in Edo, privacy isn't a courtesy, it's a containment strategy. You lie back down. Eventually, you hear the second bell, not a loud clang, but a soft chime from far off, probably from a neighborhood watchman's wooden clappers. The sound marks the hour when visitors are expected to stop moving, when doors stop opening, when even lanterns should dim. And so, you stay still, yes, flat awake. You think of the woman who brought the tea. Her eyes never met yours. Was that humility, obedience, or calculation? You think of the merchant's voice, calm, careful. What was he protecting? You or his name? You wonder what the room on the other side of that wall looks like. Is there another door, another guest, or just an empty hallway you'll never walk through? You think of all the spaces in Edo you've entered today, tea houses, bathhouses, shops, shrines, and realize how many doors you've passed through that weren't really open, not to you. The oil lamp flickers once, then settles into a quiet pulse. You finally close your eyes, knowing that in Edo, sleep is not about rest. It's about not being noticed while you do it. You wake before the third bell. The room is dark, save for the faint glow of the extinguished oil lamp and the moon's soft outline slipping through the rice paper walls. The futon beneath you has flattened overnight, and your neck aches from the wooden pillow, but the house remains still, not a creak, not a voice. You sit up slowly, careful not to disturb the silence. Unsure whether the silence is still yours to disturb, the merchant doesn't appear at the door again. Instead, the young woman who served you tea the night before appears, kneels without a word, and places a tray on the floor. Plain rice, miso soup, pickled greens, breakfast, functional. You bow, and she bows deeper, then vanishes behind the sliding door. No one lingers. You eat quickly, and when you're done, the tray disappears the moment you return to your sandals. As you step outside, the street is already alive, not with cheer, not yet, but with murmurs. Something's happened. You feel it immediately, the way people glance sideways without turning their heads, how shopkeepers frown just a bit deeper while sweeping their steps. The tension doesn't shout, it whispers through posture. Then you hear it clearly, a name, a man's name repeated with disapproval. You follow the current of movement to the square at the end of the lane, where a crowd has already formed in perfect, disciplined rows, not pushed together like a mob, but standing just close enough to show they are united and separate from whatever they've come to witness. At the center of the square, two officials stand behind a wooden platform. Their robes bear the crest of the city magistrate. Their expressions are unreadable. In front of them, a man kneels on the dirt, hands bound, head bowed. His robe is stained with dust and shame. You ask someone near you what happened. They don't look at you. They just whisper, "He sold spoiled rice." Your stomach tightens. You can still taste yours from this morning. Warm, fresh, trustworthy. But spoiled rice? That's not just fraud. That's endangerment. That's betrayal, especially in a city where trust in the marketplace is sacred. Historians still argue whether Edo's justice was efficient or performative. The first official steps forward and reads from a scroll the man's name, his offense, the nature of the inspection that revealed it. Then the confession, signed with a thumbprint and witnessed by 3 others. Was he tortured, persuaded, or genuinely remorseful? You'll never know. Punishment is announced. Public shame and confiscation of his goods. Immediate closure of his stall. 5 days in the pillory. If he survives the first 2, the crowd does not cheer. They nod, murmur, accept. Justice in Edo is not entertainment. It is maintenance. You shift uncomfortably as the man is pulled to his feet and tied to the upright wooden frame at the side of the square. His face is turned away from the sun. A placard is hung from his neck, naming his crime in bold strokes. The platform isn't high. He's still among them. Just not of them. You walk away before they start throwing anything. You pass another alley where a city inspector speaks quietly to a group of shopkeepers. They nod, then bow, then post new signs above their doors, certificates of inspection, not required, but now suddenly very much expected. You stop in front of one and read the scroll. It promises that all rice sold here is stored correctly, weighed correctly, steamed in clean pots. It is signed and stamped in red. You walk into the shop and buy a single rice ball wrapped in crisp seaweed. The owner hands it to you with both hands, eyes lowered, gratitude stitched into every wrinkle. You chew it slowly outside. It's warm, soft, safe, but your appetite's gone. A young boy runs past with a bamboo sword, swinging it at imaginary bandits. A man scolds him sharply. Don't play like that in public. The boy bows and runs off, mortified. You turn down another street and stumble upon a small building with barred windows. Inside, silence. Outside, a list of names posted on a board. It's a jail, not large, not loud, not looming, just there. You scan the list, crimes written next to each name, some minor, drunkenness, theft, disrespecting an official, others heavier, assault, blasphemy, fraud. No long-term sentences here. Justice in Edo is quick. Either you pay, you endure, or because you vanish. You walk on past the gate of a temple. Here, the mood is softer. A monk sweeps the path, humming a tune you can't place. 2 women kneel before a small altar, their prayers silent, their incense rising like forgotten speech. You join them for a moment, unsure what you're offering. You close your eyes, maybe for the man in the square, maybe for yourself, maybe because in Edo, staying upright means never standing out. You continue on and pass another corner where a different kind of justice plays out. A landlord scolding a tenant for late rent. No yelling, just disappointment layered with sharp etiquette. The tenant bows so deeply, it looks painful. She offers something, a bundle of dried fish. Maybe the landlord accepts it and walks away. No papers, no record. But it's settled. Edo justice isn't always written. It's agreed upon with tea, with silence, with debt paid in sideways glances and morning deliveries. You wonder what would happen if you made a mistake. Not a crime, just an error. A wrong bow, a wrong look, a wrong step. You wouldn't be tied to a post. Not likely, but the doors might close again. The tea house might forget your name. The tofu stall might run out before you arrive. You begin to understand the real currency here isn't just rice or silver. It's trust. And once broken, it doesn't get repaired. It gets erased. You walk slower now. You bow more deliberately. You speak less. You breathe smaller, because today you saw what happens when the line is crossed, not with malice, just carelessness. And in Edo, carelessness has a cost. You finish the rice ball, your hands still sticky with starch, and wipe them on a cloth tucked into your sleeve. Somewhere in the distance, another bell chimes. You count the rings and keep walking. You walk until the streets begin to smile again, faintly, slowly. A new kind of energy gathers beneath your feet. The weight of justice recedes, replaced by the weightlessness of pretense. Painted signs return, bolder now. Paper lanterns cluster like blossoms above shop doors. Music begins to peek from behind curtained stages. You've entered the ukiyo, the floating world, Edo's quarter of entertainment. But this world doesn't float from joy. It floats to escape. The buildings are smaller here, yet louder, like people leaning forward to tell secrets. You pass shops that sell wigs, robes, and stage makeup. Printed pamphlets flutter in the breeze. Today's performance schedules. Names of actors inked in calligraphy so dramatic they look like artwork themselves. Women in elaborate robes glide past you, heads bowed just enough to maintain mystery, voices soft as wind chimes, and then you hear it, kabuki drums. They pound in short bursts, not rhythmic like the festival's drums, but sharp and focused. Each beat is a cue, a footstep, a twist, a gasp. You follow the sound to a small theater tucked between a sake shop and a fan stall. The entrance is narrow, but the painted curtain above it announces something grand. A hand-painted image of a kabuki actor, face white, eyes rimmed in crimson, mouth curled mid-shout. You bow to the attendant, pay a coin, and step inside. The air is thick with incense and anticipation. You're ushered into a small bench near the back. The room is crowded, merchants, workers, even a few samurai seated behind screens. Children squat near the front, eyes wide. The stage is bare, but you can feel it waiting. A narrator steps forward and begins to chant, his voice rising and falling like a tide dragged by moonlight. Then the curtain parts and the world shifts. An actor strides forward, face painted into an expression so intense it seems to pulse under the lights. His voice booms, but not with volume, with gravity. Every gesture is exaggerated. A glance becomes a monologue, a step becomes a storm. The crowd leans in, not a word is missed. The story unfolds: betrayal, longing, sacrifice, a loyal servant falsely accused, a lord brought low by lies, a daughter disguised as a boy to avenge her mother's honor. You follow the threads, even when the language twists. You don't need every word. The faces say everything. You begin to realize this is where Edo speaks its real emotions, not in confession halls or court records, but here, behind painted eyebrows and exaggerated cries. Historians still argue whether kabuki was high art or subversive theater. You don't care. You're mesmerized. At intermission, the crowd stirs like a pond disturbed. People stretch, murmur, unwrap snacks from paper. You hear debates. Was the actor's death scene too fast? Was the villain too obvious? Everyone has opinions, and for once, they're allowed to say them. A man next to you leans over. That one, he says, pointing to a lean figure reapplying makeup near the side of the stage, was once a carpenter. You raise your eyebrows. Now he's more famous than half the samurai in the city, the man adds, grinning. Oh, he's not exaggerating. In the floating world, the normal hierarchy softens. Actors are adored. Courtesans shape trends. A fish seller can become a patron. For a few hours, the city reshuffles, but not too much. You watch as the actor returns, now in a woman's kimono, onagata, male performers trained to embody femininity with such precision it becomes its own truth. His movements are graceful, his voice softened to silk, and yet, behind every delicate gesture, there's power, not just performance, but control. You glance at the audience and see a group of women watching with rapt attention. You wonder what they see. Themselves? A version better than the one society allows them? Or something safer? An illusion that doesn't threaten? The story resumes. The servant is vindicated, the villain punished. The daughter returns home, but doesn't remove her disguise. The curtain falls before we find out if anyone notices. The audience applauds softly, not a roar, but a ripple outside. Night has deepened. The theater empties slowly, like a dream draining from a waking mind. You linger near the exit, eyes adjusting to the lantern-lit street. The man from before nods to you again. Same play tomorrow, he says. Different ending. You blink. Really? He shrugs. Depends who's watching. You walk away unsure whether that was a joke or an invitation. Farther down the street, you pass a portrait seller laying out ink sketches of actors in their most famous roles. Their faces just are frozen in mid-expression, defiant, weeping, triumphant. You pause before one, your actor, the one who played the loyal daughter. You almost buy it, but something stops you because you don't want a frozen moment. You want what just happened, the live, pulsing now of it. You walk on, turning onto a smaller side alley where the floating world reveals its quieter parts. You pass a tea house where low singing drifts through wooden screens. A trio of women laugh, just slightly too loud. You hear a shamisen plucked lazuli, a few notes hanging in the air like perfume. You pause near the door. Inside is more performance, but this kind requires coin and practice and careful forgetting. You move on. The floating world is beautiful, but it floats for a reason, and beneath it all, you remember the man strapped to the pillory this morning. Edo knows how to punish. It also knows how to pretend, and sometimes the two aren't so far apart. You return to the main road, the air now cooler, the crowds thinner. The city begins its slow descent into night. A vendor sweeps his stall. A cart creaks past. Somewhere far away, another drumbeat begins, but softer now, more like a lullaby. You wonder if tomorrow the same actor will weep harder, or fall slower, or say a line just slightly different. You wonder how many versions of Edo exist, all layered over each other, like makeup on a stage. You keep walking, because in the floating world, nothing stays still. The floating world fades behind you, swallowed by the deepening night, its music and laughter replaced by the sharp awareness of where you are, and more importantly, where you are not supposed to be. Edo does not sleep deeply. It waits. It shifts. And after dark, it watches. You turn into a quieter street, one less traveled, lined with houses made of dry wood and shoji screens trembling in the wind. The paper-thin walls seem to breathe, somewhere nearby. A dog barks once and is silenced. The air smells faintly of charcoal and wet ash. You glance up and see it, a blackened beam rising above the rooftops, scorched and splintered, a husk of a house, hollowed by fire not long ago. The air still carries the ghost of it, burnt tatami, warped lacquer, a family's name charred into dust. Edo burns often, too often, a spark, a careless ember, a tipped lantern, and half the neighborhood could vanish before the bells ring. The city is made of wood, layered and packed like kindling. Roof to roof, wall to wall, all it takes is one accident or one grudge. You pass a man crouched beside a bucket, checking the water level. Another scrubs the street in front of his home, brushing away dry leaves and stray straw. These are not chores. These are rituals of defense. Edo is not afraid of criminals. Edo is afraid of fire. Historians still argue whether Edo's greatest enemy was man, nature, or the way they collided. You cross a footbridge where the wind picks up, rattling the lanterns until they swing like heads on loose necks. You stop at the center and look out over the rooftops. From here, the city looks peaceful, but you know better now. Somewhere beneath that calm is a spark, always waiting. A soft clack echoes through the street below. Hiyoshigi, the wooden night watch blocks. Two men in short coats walk in rhythm, one clacking, the other calling out, Hai no yojin, kajini yojin. Be careful of fire. Guard against flames. They pause at each corner, announcing their presence not just for protection, but as a warning. They don't carry weapons. Their authority is in vigilance, not violence. You step aside as they pass, bowing slightly. One of them glances at you, then at your feet. Your hem is too low, he mutters. You blink, confused. If it drags in oil or ash, you'll bring it into someone's home. You nod, lift your robe slightly, and thank him. He doesn't respond, just walks on, clacking. You continue through the residential blocks, watching the lights flicker out one by one. Edo has no curfew, not officially, but the streets enforce their own kind of silence after the sixth bell. Doors close, windows shutter, voices drop, and yet, in the distance, you hear shouting. You freeze. It's not joyous, not drunken, not storytelling. It's warning. Then comes the sound of running, bells ringing, metal clanging against wood. You follow the noise instinctively, drawn into the motion even as fear prickles down your spine. At the edge of the neighborhood, a crowd has gathered near a low-roofed building. Smoke curls from the eaves. People pass buckets in a ragged line, water sloshing onto sleeves and sandals. Children are pulled back by mothers, elderly ushered away by neighbors, but no one flees in panic. They've done this before. You join the line without asking. A bucket is handed to you, heavy, wet, rough wood against your palms. You pass it on. Another is shoved into your hands. You move with the rhythm. No talking, just water. A man on the roof uses a cloth to beat at the smoke. A woman screams from inside. Two men run in, come out coughing, one holding a scroll box, the other dragging a futon soaked in water. The flames don't grow, but they don't die either. They hiss and flicker like something alive, angry, small, but ambitious. You hear someone say it was a dropped candle. Someone else says it was sabotage, a grudge, a jealous apprentice. You don't ask. Eventually, the fire relents, not extinguished, but smothered, choked out by urgency and sweat and repetition. A final bucket is thrown. The smoke fades. The crowd doesn't cheer. They simply breathe, then scatter. No officials arrive. No magistrates. This is a neighborhood matter. Punishment, if needed, will come tomorrow. You stay behind, helping gather buckets. A young girl in a soot-streaked robe hands you a cup of barley tea. It's cold. Perfect. Thank you, she says, then runs off. You sit for a moment near a wall, your hands black with ash, your knees aching. Around you, people begin brushing off the debris, returning their homes to order, because Edo can burn, but it doesn't crumble, not yet. You rise and make your way toward your lodging, following the dim flicker of lanterns. You pass two men arguing over whether to rebuild the roof tonight or wait until morning. One votes for rest. The other mutters, "Rain doesn't wait." You leave them to it. In the distance, another pair of night watchmen clap their blocks. "Hi no Yojin." You stop at a small shrine tucked between two homes, barely visible behind a bamboo fence. A single votive candle flickers inside. You kneel, bow your head, and whisper something you don't understand until it leaves your lips. Let it all stay standing till morning. You rise and step back into the street. The air smells clearer now. The threat has passed, but the fear hasn't. Not really. In Edo, you learn to live with it, like hunger, like silence. You adjust your robe, step over a cracked stone, and walk on. Somewhere behind you, a pile of soaked wood still steams, and somewhere ahead, a paper lantern glows like a heartbeat, too warm to touch, too fragile to last. Your feet are sore and ash-streaked. The air has cooled, brushing gently across your cheeks like a silk fan. You follow the narrow road eastward now, the kind that tapers the deeper you go. Lanterns are sparser, footsteps more distant, yet one sound begins to grow clearer with every turn. Wind chimes, not musical ones, temple chimes, metal against metal, struck by the wind in slow, irregular rhythms, soft but deliberate. You arrive at the gate of a modest temple nestled between two sloping hills, just above the rooftops of the district. Its wooden torii is plain, worn smooth by rain and prayer. A lone pine tree stands to one side, twisted and dignified. A crow sits on the gate's beam, watching you, not cawing, just waiting. You bow before stepping through the gate. The courtyard is nearly empty. A single monk sweeps fallen leaves beneath the stone lanterns, his straw sandals whispering against the earth. He doesn't look up. You take off your sandals and step onto the temple veranda. The wooden floor creaks, not from neglect, but age. A bell hangs overhead, not for time, but for thought. You don't ring it, you wait. Eventually, the monk glances over and gives a short nod. "Looking for rest?" he asks. You shake your head. Clarity. He nods once. Same thing. He gestures toward the inner chamber. You step through the sliding door and into a space that is barely lit. A single oil lamp flickers beside a polished altar. On it rests no great idol, just a simple stone tablet, blackened with smoke and ringed by offerings, dried persimmons, rice, a folded slip of paper. This isn't a temple of grandeur. It's a temple of memory. You kneel. There's no ceremony, no chanting, just the scent of incense and your own breath. Then, softly, you speak a name, not one that belongs to you, not even one you were asked to remember, just the first name that floats to the surface of your thoughts. The name stays in the air. The monk returns and sits a short distance away. "She'll hear you," he says. You ask, "Who?" He shrugs. "Whichever ancestor you meant." You pause. Then, "What if I said a stranger's name?" He looks at the flame. "Strangers were people once. The gods don't check your lineage." You sit together in silence. Outside, the chimes stir again. The crow caws once, as if answering a question you didn't know you asked. Historians still argue whether Edo's temples offered sanctuary or surveillance, because this place isn't just for prayer, it's for watching, not with suspicion, but with memory. The monk rises. "Oh, do you want to draw a fortune?" You nod. He returns with a wooden box and sets it between you. You shake it gently, and a stick slides out, inked with a single character. He reads it, nods once, then retrieves a matching slip of paper from a drawer. He hands it to you. A folded omikuji fortune. You open it. Small blessings, safe travel, success in patience, warning against arrogance. It's neither good nor bad, just balanced. Like the city, he sees your expression. Most fortunes are meant to be reminders, not predictions. You fold the paper and tie it to the designated rack outside, where hundreds of others flutter like pale feathers. Some are faded and some fresh, but all of them seem to move in the same rhythm, as if breathing. A small wooden sign nearby reads, "May what you release find its proper place." You return to the courtyard. The monk offers you a ladle of water to cleanse your hands. You rinse in silence. The water is cold, shocking, but clean. It seeps into your sleeves and down to your elbows. "Do you write?" he asks suddenly. You pause. "Sometimes." He leads you to a small corner of the courtyard where a wooden board rests on a stand. It's a communal tablet for written wishes and regrets. Not official, not sacred, just shared. You kneel, pick up the brush, and hesitate. What can you write that hasn't already been thought 1,000 times today? In the end, you write something simple. "Let me leave no harm behind." You hang the wooden plaque among dozens of others. Some carry names. Others bear wishes, wealth, love, forgiveness. One just says, "I'm sorry I couldn't stay." You step back and bow. As you do, the monk gently points toward a smaller building to the side. "That used to be a records hall," he says. "We wrote down who died here. Then we started writing who lived." You look through the open door. Inside are rows of wooden drawers, each labeled, each holding a slip of parchment or a tag with a name. No commentary, no judgment, just acknowledgement. "Why both?" you ask. He replies without turning, "Because Edo forgets loud things quickly, but it remembers quiet ones for generations." You feel it then, that this temple watches not to control, but to carry, not to assign blame, but to prevent erasure. A memory preserved is a wrong softened, or a lesson planted. You return to the gate. The crow is gone. The wind has picked up slightly, rattling the chimes harder now. The city calls you back. You bow once more at the threshold, lower this time, and step outside. The walk downhill is gentle. The rooftops reappear. The glow of the lanterns resumes. But something's shifted, not the streets. The city no longer looks quite as overwhelming. Still vast, still full of rules, but even not unknowable. Some things can be spoken aloud, others whispered at a shrine, and some, like your name written on a plaque, simply left to drift among the wind chimes. You adjust your sleeves and continue on. You're walking back through the narrowing lanes. When something stops you, it's not a sound, not a face, just a moment, a thread pulling your thoughts sideways. What if everything you've seen, every rule you've followed, every glance you've dodged, were lived as a woman in Edo? You blink, and the city shifts. Now your robe is tighter, wrapped higher, your sleeves more delicate. Your sandals are smaller, your steps shorter, not because you're weak, but because grace demands it. You feel the shift in posture, in expectation, not just from others, but from yourself. You are now seen differently and unseen more often. The road before you no longer offers as many places to pause. You step aside to let men pass. You lower your head a bit more. Your hands rest atop each other when standing still. These aren't rules you read. They're rules you absorbed by watching 100 women today, each one speaking without sound. You pass a fabric shop. The clerk bows lower to the man ahead of you. When it's your turn, he hesitates before showing you the good stock. You're not offended. It's just that your worth is measured differently here. You continue on, passing a woman drinking water from a well. She doesn't look up, but her hands are precise, her sleeves tied back in a knot only women use. A child clings to her hip. She lifts the bucket with one arm, adjusts the baby with the other, and returns inside without a word. No applause, no praise. That's not the currency here. You turn a corner and approach a cosmetic stall. Rows of small wooden boxes display powdered rice flour, charcoal sticks for brows, safflower rouge for lips. A girl, maybe 15, is testing the shape of her eyeliner with a piece of polished bronze. Her hand trembles, not from inexperience, but because she knows this is more than makeup. This is her armor, her application of identity. Historians still argue whether Edo women were oppressed or powerfully strategic. You're starting to see it's not one or the other. You step into the shadows of a tea house, watching from the side as two women pour tea for a table of guests. Their backs are straight, hands light, movements smooth. But between them, a flicker of eye contact, a shift in pace. You sense control. They're directing the tempo, adjusting for tension, steering the mood without speaking. The guests don't notice. That's the point. You imagine the day behind them, rising before dawn, preparing rice, brushing robes, minding children, dodging insult, kneeling, lifting, bowing, soothing, remembering, and now serving with smiles that aren't always earned under lanterns that don't light their names. You walk on, past a woman seated beside a ledger, counting coins with swift, practiced fingers. A merchant's wife, no doubt. Her husband's name is on the door, but her hand runs the house. Farther down the lane, A young girl is scolded for running too fast. Her grandmother pulls her close and adjusts her hairpin, murmuring something you can't hear. The girl bows. The grandmother bows back. Respect is learned early, but so is constraint. You stop at a small courtyard where a group of women are washing laundry, not loudly, but with rhythm. The sound of fabric slapping against boards becomes music. One hums a song, another joins. Their voices rise into the evening like steam, a moment of joy, not rare, but always brief. You approach a temple and see a woman lighting incense at the altar. She bows 3 times. Her kimono is modest but finely stitched. You notice her hands, scarred, work-worn. Her prayer is long, not hurried, not whispers. You don't know her name, but you know her story. It's written on her back, in the way she bows, deeply, with conviction, not because someone is watching, but because no one is. You follow the path to a side street, where children chase each other under the soft halo of paper lanterns. A mother claps her hands sharply once, and the game ends. The children fall in line. She counts them quietly, then nods. They walk home in silence. Oh, you watch until they disappear behind a door that slides shut as if sealing them in safety. You step into a shop to buy a sweet. The shopkeeper, a woman in her 40s, hands it to you without a smile, but with precision. She offers a cloth to wrap it in. Adjust your change to the exact amount. It's not coldness, it's efficiency. She has other things to do. As you leave, she adds, try not to eat it all before you get home. A rare softness, a small kindness that doesn't ask for reply. You nod and bow. Outside, the streets begin to dim. The hour grows late. You pass a row of homes and see silhouettes through the paper walls. A woman brushing her hair, another stitching a hem, a grandmother rocking a child. They aren't hidden, but they aren't framed either. They exist in the quiet hours, shaping the world with hands that are rarely thanked and voices that speak mostly in gestures. You stop and think about everything you've seen today. The merchants, the monks, the guards, the actors, the punishments and the performances, the tea and the fire, and now this, the unseen architecture of womanhood in a city that calls itself orderly. You adjust your robe again, a bit tighter now, not out of modesty, but out of understanding. You take one more breath and release it slowly, not with exhaustion, with respect. Because if surviving one day in Edo is hard, doing so as a woman, unseen yet central, bound yet brilliant, is its own form of power. And now, it's time to return to your own skin. You blink, and the city shifts back. The streets are emptier now. Even the lanterns seem quieter, their flickering slower, more uncertain, as if they, too, are growing tired. You take a turn down a familiar alley, one you passed earlier that morning without knowing its name. Now, the stones beneath your feet remember you. They echo your steps gently, not intrusively, as though welcoming you back without fanfare. This is what Edo does at night. It folds itself back in, not suddenly, not with a grand closing of gates, but slowly, in layers, the noise, the crowds, the heat. They fall away one by one until only the breath of the city remains. You find a bench beneath a ginkgo tree. The air smells faintly of sap and earth. Somewhere nearby, a dog shakes its coat, a wooden bell clinking softly on its collar. No one chases it, No one barks back. Everyone is winding down. You look up. The stars tonight are few, peeking through the gauze of wood smoke and lantern haze. But the moon is there, silver and round, watching everything silently, watching you. You breathe in and try to remember everything you've seen today, every tiny moment, every glance, every voice pitched low with caution or laced high with joy. You've walked through markets and magistrates, fires and festivals, temples and tea houses, plays and prayers, and now you're simply bent still. This is what it means to survive Edo, not to master it, not to change it, just to last one day. You hear a cartwheel creak in the distance, the soft whisper of straw being swept from a doorstep, a low murmur of two people deciding whether to speak or just go to bed without saying anything. And still, the city holds. You think about the women washing laundry in rhythm, the merchant who never smiled but never faltered, the actor who wept in perfect silence, the monk who told you strangers are remembered too. You think of the man with ash on his sleeves, fighting fire with bare hands. And you realize Edo isn't a place made of buildings. It's made of actions, small ones, repeated endlessly. You rise and walk a little farther, one last stretch before rest, past a shuttered food stall where a pot of broth still simmers low, past a half-open window where someone is quietly humming a lullaby you don't recognize, past a canal bridge where lovers once etched initials go into the railing, now faded by time and rain. You pause again, not because you're lost, but because you've found the city's quietest rhythm. It's not in the bells or clappers, not in the rules or robes. It's in the pauses, in the in-betweens. You glance over your shoulder and see nothing chasing you. No threat, no task left unfinished, just shadow and sleep and stillness. You return to your lodging. The entrance is dark now, the lantern out. You slide the door open carefully and step inside. The futon waits for you, freshly laid out, your clothes folded beside it. Someone thought of you before leaving for the night. You don't know who. That's enough. You sit, unwrap your robe, stretch your toes against the cool floor, and lie down. The walls are paper again, the air still, but this time you don't feel caged. You feel held outside. The city hums in its sleep, not with noise, but with memory. A lullaby sung by streets and smoke, by footsteps and wooden walls, by people whose names may never be written down, but who lived anyway. You realize you're not a visitor anymore. Not really. You're part of Edo now, not by blood, not by birth, but by breath, by walking its rhythm, by listening to what it doesn't say, by lasting through its day. You close your eyes and let the city fold you in too. The moon shifts slightly across the sky, casting soft shadows against the shoji screen. In the distance, a nightbird calls, a low, fluttering sound that drifts gently across rooftops. You're floating now, not through streets, but through the memory of them, the warmth of tea on your tongue, the creak of the stage beneath a kabuki actor's step, the scent of wood smoke and barley, the gentle clack of a watchman's blocks warning the world to sleep safely. It all comes back in pieces, quiet, patient pieces, and then it fades. The noises grow even softer now. The city isn't gone, just resting, and you, too, can let go. You've walked its streets, met its people, heard its stories, and carried its burdens. You've smiled where others could see and cried where no one could. You've done enough, so let your limbs grow heavy. Let your breath fall slow. Let the stars blink lazily above you, even if you can't see them. Somewhere in the city, another watchman clicks his blocks. Another futon is unrolled. Another soft prayer is whispered behind thin walls. The world doesn't stop, but for now, it pauses just long enough for you to drift. And so you do. Sweet dreams.